It's time for Michigan's newest sports talk show, Mitten Madness.
And here he goes. Defense win championship.
Michigan sports talk from here in Battle Creek. The latest stories, the biggest games, all across the Mitten State.
That's not something you play with.
Streaming live and on demand on the 95.3 WBCK app. Here are your hosts, Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes.
Welcome into Mitten Madness here on 95.3 WBCK. I am Da'Jzon Hughes, and we're going to get you into another weekend full of sports. We're going to talk all things Michigan. Most importantly, we're going to talk our Detroit Tigers and how their season is progressing and where they'll be going over the next couple of weeks as we look to continue the hot streak that they have started. We'll also touch on college football. The college football playoff has put out a new seeding criteria and how that will affect brackets moving forward, and maybe even touch on how it would have affected the 2024 bracket if it had been implemented this year. We'll also talk a little bit of college lacrosse and probably the WNBA as well as we get into the Memorial Day weekend. As always, I'm not going to skip over me, tell you how I'm doing. We had our banquet for lacrosse this week. Things went well. I said farewell to my first group of seniors. Seniors this year were freshmen my first year coaching. They will always be a special group to me. They will always be a group that will mean the utmost to me because I've grown so much with them over the last 4 years as they have went through high school and I've went through my first 4 years of coaching. And then other than that, it's been a crazy week here, putting in work in the studios, making sure everything is running smoothly as it should. So with that being said, not going to hold you up any longer. Of course, we'll get into our picks later on in the show. Last week was a phenomenal week for me, and I'm hoping it was the same for you. Let us know how you did using that chat feature on the BCK app. Getting rolling this week, we're going to talk about one of the hottest teams in baseball. Yes, we are talking the Detroit Tigers. If we go all the way back to basically the beginning of the season, the Tigers have been destined to play phenomenal baseball this year. They did get swept by the Dodgers 5-4, 8-5, and 10, and 7-3 in 3 games. They did get the best of Seattle. They swept the White Sox before getting the best of the Yankees, the best of the Twins, and then lost a series to the Brewers before beating the Royals 3-1 in a series, beating San Diego in a series. They swept Baltimore. They lost 2-1 in a series to Houston, won 3-1 over the Angels, swept the Colorado Rockies in a 3-game series, lost 2-1 to the Rangers in a 3-game series, swept the Boston Red Sox, beat the Toronto Blue Jays in a 3-game series, and then this past week, at the beginning of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, they won 2 of 3 over the St. Louis Cardinals. After losing the first game 11-4, they bounced back 5-4 and 5-1 to win the last 2 games of that series, improving their record to 32-17 and then 33-17 before dropping a game to Cleveland on Thursday night 7-0. Which was a huge drop for Flaherty on the day. He drops to 2-6 on the year. The Tigers are 33-18. As we've said all year, the Detroit Tigers have been phenomenal. We knew what we were going to get on the mound from this crew between Casey Mize, Tariq Skubal, Jack Flaherty, Mr. Job, and etc. Montero has done great as well. The bullpen has been able to come in and get a handful of saves on the year. The Tigers have played phenomenal baseball in terms of pitching and defense. We knew coming in based off what we got at the end of last year, and honestly for pitching most of the season last season, that the Tigers were going to be one of the best pitching and defensive teams in the American League, and they've bested that, actually. They're not only one of the best defensive and pitching teams in the AL, in the American League, they're one of the best in the entire Major League Baseball league. Like the entire league, they are one of the best, if not the best. They have been one of the most exciting teams to watch this year. Every game is exciting baseball. Whether you're watching on TV or you're sitting in a seat in the stands, this team is fun to watch. They play with energy and they play with that Detroit grit, which has brought a lot of Tigers fans back out to enjoy Comerica Park. I was just making a joke not too long ago that it's kind of crazy. All they need to do was change the script. They changed it from Tigers to Comerica Park, and all of a sudden, the Tigers are the best team in baseball. I didn't know this was all that we needed for things to be good. We should have made this switch years ago. Obviously, I'm kidding. That's not the real switch. It was just a decide that these guys were going to be the guys. They all were looking at each other in the locker room one day and decided that they were going to be the group of guys to bring the Tigers back to the top of baseball. They were going to be the group of guys that Detroit fans were excited to watch baseball again. They were going to be the group of guys that brought back Tigers baseball. We remember in 2006, we remember in the early 2010s when the Tigers were making the playoffs consistently, when they were making a push to be in the World Series, when they had guys who were fighting for triple crowns, who had guys who were in the battle for the home run leader of the year. They had guys who could put the ball in play and make things happen. Guess what is back? The Tigers have guys who can put the ball in play and make things happen. The bats have been unreal for the Detroit Tigers so far this year. We've seen, a crazy amount of runs out of the Detroit Tigers this year. There have been a handful of games this year where they've scored more than 10 runs. Most games this year, they have scored more than 5 runs. There's not too many games where they're scoring 3 or less runs, which was something that they did frequently last year. It's hard to win games when you aren't scoring runs, even if you're keeping runs off the board. The Tigers were losing games last year 1-0, 2-0. That's a hard loss to take. It makes you feel like you were right there, but you're still on the outside looking in, understanding that you're still missing a few pieces, understanding that things can still get a little bit better. The Tigers are not in that spot anymore. The Tigers are winning those 1 and 2 run games. The Tigers are winning those games where they're only scoring 3 runs because they're holding teams to 0, 1 run. That is huge for this team. Like I said, we know what we were expecting from the defensive side of the ball for the Detroit Tigers this year, having one of the best starting lineups and bullpens in baseball, and then having a group of guys behind those pitchers that want to help them be successful has been unreal. Casey Mize already has 6 wins on the year. Skubal right behind him with 4 or 5. So it's not like this team isn't putting together the things they need. The bats have really, really been going so far this year. Job is 4-0 on the year. Vest is 4-0. Gray's got 5-1 record. That was for the Cardinals. But, Vest is 4-0 on the year. Job is 4-0 on the year. Flaherty has been struggling, but he does have one of the best ERAs in the league. So the team isn't too far off from being exactly where they want to be. They're in great shape. If we want to look at the standings, we'll start obviously with the divisional standings. At the top of the AL East, the New York Yankees at 30-19. The top of the AL West, the Seattle Mariners at 28-21. And of course, at the top of the AL Central, the Detroit Tigers, 33-18, holding a 5-game lead on the Guardians, Twins, and Royals. The Guardians and Twins both 27-22. The Royals 28-23. And obviously the White Sox trailing behind far and away, 17.5 games behind the Tigers at 15-35. Down in the National League, the Philadelphia Phillies 32-18, sitting at the top of the NL East. The NL Central belongs to the Cubs. They're 30-2. And then the NL West belongs to the Dodgers at 31-19. As of right now, when we look at the leagues, The American League, obviously owned by the Tigers, 33-18 with sole possession up top. They're 2 games above the Yankees, 4 games above the Mariners at 28-21. And then, of course, the 5 games over the Guardians and Twins, who round out the top 5 in the American League. In the National League, the Phillies sit at the top at 32-18. The Dodgers just 1 game behind at 31-19. Both sitting 2 games behind are the Cubs and Mets at 30-20. And then 29-21, 3 games behind are the San Francisco Giants, who are rounding out the top 5 in the National League. But overall, in the entire Major League Baseball, there's one team that sits the top, just a half game above the team in second place. Does anybody want to take a wild guess at what team is sitting at the top of the MLB standings? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. What am I talking about? The Detroit Tigers are the number 1 team in baseball. The Detroit Tigers are the best team in the MLB right now. They're 33-18 on the year, just a half game above the Phillies. They have a plus 78 differential on the scoreboard. Only the Yankees and the Cubs are better than that at 83 and 95. Cubs at 83, Yankees at 95, Dodgers at 62, the Mets at plus 56. At the bottom of that standings for the point differential, the Colorado Rockies at 159. They've given up way too many runs, 323 while only scoring 164. But the Tigers on the flip side of that, giving up 189 runs to the 267 they have scored. They're 7-3 in their last 10 on a current 1-game lose streak. We'll see what they have as they try and get back at the Guardians, and we'll talk more about their early week series next week when we get into our picks. We're going to dive more into college football in our next segment as we continue Mitten Madness here on 95.3 WBCK. We're back with more Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. It's time for us to talk some college football. As we know, football season is right around the corner. It is on the horizon as summer comes and we enjoy the end of football and basketball. And, of course, we get into the meatiest part of the baseball season. We know that football is looming right down the line, and there's plenty of excitement for football here in the state of Michigan, and rightfully so. There's a lot of questions that need to be answered about football here, and we'll start, obviously, with Michigan State. Nobody knows what their season is going to look like this year. I think they had a better season last year than what some people figured they would. I think there were some games that people thought they should have won that they didn't, and there were some games that they won that people maybe felt that they shouldn't have won. So that's just a part of bringing in a new regime, having a new head coach, having a new quarterback, watching a lot of guys leave in the transfer portal, bringing in new guys from the transfer portal, and also dealing with allegations. We're not going to act like Michigan State isn't a football program that has had to deal with some unfortunate endings and some allegations that have kind of tainted the program in some people's eyes, making it harder for them to recruit. How do you recruit to a team that has lost to its rival multiple years in a row, has a coach leaving for allegations, and hasn't made a bowl game in, 4 or 5 years? It gets increasingly difficult to get people to believe in your program, believe in what you are trying to do for the program, and believe in the philosophy that you have to bring that team back to the top. I think Jonathan Smith has done a phenomenal job so far at putting Michigan State into a winnable position. I think that a lot of guys they have brought in over the transfer portal and in this recruiting class for the freshmen are going to be impact players for them, are going to be guys that are going to help lead this team back to where they want to be, going to help make that locker room what it should be. Jonathan Smith was a phenomenal coaching decision for the Michigan State Spartans. And obviously, on the other side of that rivalry, are the Michigan Wolverines. We know what, their work is laid out for them. They did lose a ton on the defensive end this year. They lost a ton on the offensive end last year. They struggled last year, scoring touchdowns. They struggled winning games. They were able to get to a bowl game after beating that team down south in a close 13-10 game that was grueling in everything that the game is about. And then they were able to go on and beat the Alabama Crimson Tide down in Tampa for the ReliaQuest Bowl. So they ended and started the 2024 year by taking down Alabama. So that says a lot about where the country or where the team is going over the next couple of years. But we're not going to act like the elephants aren't in the room. We have no idea what Bryce Underwood is going to look like. We have no idea if Bryce Underwood is actually going to be the starting quarterback of this team. For all we know, Mikey Keene could still step out and be the starter. Jaden Davis obviously still has a chance to be the starter, but we are all expecting Bryce Underwood to be the starter for the Michigan Wolverines come game number 1. But the question is, how good will Bryce Underwood be as QB1 for Michigan? Is he going to be a star-studded talent like we all expect him to be and come in and make changes and be one of the best quarterbacks in the league or in the country as a freshman? That's tough. Asking any true freshman to step right in, grab the reins, and be one of the best is tough. And you're asking him to play in the toughest, if not the second toughest conference in the entire country when it comes to football. It's going to be hard. I think a lot of Michigan fans have high expectations for Bryce Underwood and what the Michigan Wolverines can do. They are still returning a lot of pieces on defense. They are still returning and have one of the best running back rooms in the entire country. They have a lot of pieces to be successful. Sharon Moore proved that he can win the biggest of games. But there's obviously some other question marks there. Obviously, the biggest two are going to be weeks 3 and 4 against Central Michigan and Nebraska. Can the Michigan team stay true to their identity, stay true to themselves, and play good football and make their head coach Sharon Moore proud while he watches from his home here in Michigan? Or will we be talking about this Michigan team in a totally different scenario after they drop a game or two early in the year because their coach is sitting a suspension? We do know that he is going to coach week 1 against New Mexico. He's going to coach week 2 against Oklahoma, his alma mater, and then he's going to take a 2-week hiatus while he serves a self-imposed 2-game suspension before finishing out the rest of the season. But what I don't think a lot of people had in mind with that situation is Michigan's schedule could become daunting if they were to lose a couple of those games. More importantly, that Central Michigan and Nebraska, because right after that, they go on a Big Ten gauntlet of Wisconsin, USC, Washington, Michigan State, Purdue, Northwestern, Maryland, and Ohio State. As we know, Northwestern probably not too much of a concern. I think Michigan fans feel safe about playing Michigan State and Purdue, but we can't act like Washington didn't beat us last year. We can't act like USC didn't beat Michigan by 7 points last year. We can't act like Wisconsin isn't a viable team to win at any point in the year. Maryland has sneakily become a top 6 team in the Big Ten. And then obviously closing out the year with the game, the Suckeyes down in Ohio State. Luckily that game is played at the Big House this year, but those are all things to think about. If they lose 2 or 3 of these first 4 games, things get rough. But if they come out of this 4-0, maybe they're 12-0. Maybe they're 11-1. It's really tough to say what this team's record is, depending on what happens in those first couple of weeks. And that is uberly important. How this team starts the first couple of weeks of this year and starts this season will be uberly important to whether or not they make it into the college football playoff. You ask me why? Well, it's simple. It's because things are changing a little bit. After months of discussion, the College Football Playoff Committee is doing away with the byes to the 4 most highly ranked conference champions, and they will now just do a straight seeding format. There are still plenty of things to discuss regarding what the CFP will look like in 2026 and beyond, But starting in 2025, which is less than 100 days away, the top 12 seededs will be seeded exactly how they are, 1 through 12, and then, you'll have the fifth conference champion come in. They'll most likely be at that 12 spot, but everybody else 1 through 11 should be chalk. So if you even look at last year's tournament and how things would have played out, I think things would have been completely different. You get Clemson in at 12 still, but they play the 5 seed Notre Dame. Ohio State would play the 11 seed Arizona State, and they would host that game as well. The 7-seeded Tennessee would host a game against the 10-seeded SMU, and then Indiana at the 8 seed would get to host a game against Boise State, which changes the probability and everything. Obviously, they expected Notre Dame to move on. They expected the same for Ohio State. Tennessee was projected to win 66.9% of the time by 7 points. And then Indiana was expected to move on by 12.5 points, 78.3% of the time. And even assuming that all of the home teams won in that simulation, you get Oregon at Indiana for the Rose Bowl, 1 versus 8. You get 4v5 Penn State versus Notre Dame for the Fiesta Bowl. You get 3 Texas versus 6 Ohio State for the Sugar Bowl. And number 2 Georgia versus number 7 Tennessee for the Peach Bowl. Semifinals, Oregon versus Notre Dame, Georgia versus Ohio State. And then the final, believe it or not, they say Notre Dame versus Ohio State. And that is something that we saw, and we know how that played out. So even if things did change, they think that last year's tournament turns out similar to what we had this year. A couple of different changes in the variations of matchups, but at the end, they believe that the team down south still hoists the national championship at the end of the year. But that's just something to keep in mind moving forward, that teams will be seeded accurately. Will not get, a Boise State getting a bye moving forward. They do say that they think this makes conference titles feel like they mean a little bit less now, but the only way for us to actually find that out is at the end of the 2025 college football playoff season. When we get into the college football playoff, we see how people are seeded and we see who wins the games and who doesn't. That's going to decide everything. But what I'll tell you is it's going to be a lot harder for a 2-loss, 3-loss Big Ten team to get in. It's going to be harder for a 2-loss, 3-loss SEC team to get in. This means the regular season matters. You got to win those games in your conference. Guarantee yourself a slot in the college football playoff by winning your regular season conference title, and then go and win your tournament title, and then boom, you have no problems. If you win your Big Ten championship game, you win your SEC championship game after going undefeated in the regular season, you are for sure in the college football playoff. You are for sure going to most likely be a top 4 seed and get a bye. These are things that you can feel safe on if you focus on the regular season. So if you ask me, this is by far a great decision by the college football playoff to decide to have these teams really play the games that matter in the regular season and seed them based off of how good they are in the regular season. The best teams will be rewarded, and the teams that deserve to be in will get in, and we won't see kind of crazy matchups. I think we'll start to see a lot more parity, but also a lot more competitive games in the playoff as this thing moves forward. Only time will tell, and I'm hoping that Michigan can find themselves back in the college football playoff. We are going to be back talking college lacrosse and WNBA as we get more of Mitten Madness to you on 95.3 WBC.
Detroit sports fans, Wolverines and Spartans alike, this is your sports show, Mitten Madness, with Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes on 95.3 WBCK.
Welcome back to Mitten Madness here on 95.3 WBCK. We're almost getting you into this Memorial Day weekend in the best way possible. We're going to get some sports rolling, but we got to talk about one of the most exciting sports on a Memorial Day weekend. We're going to talk some college lacrosse here. A lot of you may not know a lot about lacrosse, but that's okay. You're going to learn because I am basically a lacrosse fanatic. So I'm going to get you all locked in on what you need to know. But coming up this weekend, a lot is going down. So the D2 National Championship game was Friday night for the women's. The D3 Women's National Championship game will be on Saturday, later today. And then the D3 Men's Championship game will be on Sunday. All the men's championships games, D1, D2, and D3, will be played at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. That's also where the Division I Women's Championship game will be played. So we're going to get you all caught up on who's playing where and when they will be playing. First, we'll start with the women. We'll go to D3, and in the bracket, their semifinals are today, 4 p.m. We're Friday night, 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. You had Middlebury and Colby taking each other on. Tufts and Gettysburg will be balling. I had Middlebury and Tufts making it out into the championship game, and I believe Tufts will win this one, as this game will be played on Sunday, 5:25 at noon for their championship. And then you scroll up to D2, and let me tell you, D2 men's and women's lacrosse is getting funky. So actually, before I even touch on that, I will get over to the men's side of lacrosse. And in D3, there is one program, one school that is looking to double up in both. Tufts is already in the men's championship game, which will go down on Sunday at 7 p.m. Tufts will be taking on Dickinson in the men's championship game. Dickinson has been on a tear. Dickinson has taken down Williams in an early game. Dickinson started this year taking down Denison, a top 10 team in the country, before taking down Salisbury, a top 5 team in the country, and then takes down RPI, another top 10 team in the country, to find themselves paired up against RIT in the semifinals, the number 1 team in the country. They were able to take them down, and now they find themselves playing the number 2 team in the country, Tufts, for a chance at the national championship game, who handled Bowdoin 26-11 in the semis. So that one will be fired up, juicy for the national championship game. I told you D2 was weird. 5:24 Saturday, 5 p.m. women's D2 matchup. Number 1 Tampa versus number 3 Adelphi. Do you want to take a guess at which one of these teams will be playing in the men's tournament as well? I think Tampa's going to take this one down. They've been an absolute wagon for most of the year. I don't see that stopping anytime soon. I think Tampa takes down Adelphi and wins the D2 Women's National Championship. And funny thing is, on the D2 side for the men's, you have Adelphi as a 1 seed and you have Tampa as a 1 seed playing each other once again. Both of these teams going to be looking to double up. There's a chance that they split. There's a chance that they double up. I honestly like Adelphi here. Adelphi has been absolutely unreal on the men's side of the game this year. Not saying that Tampa doesn't have a chance, but Adelphi has truly been a team that very few teams have had an answer for. And I think that they're going to complete things on Sunday, 4 p.m., with a championship being hoisted to Adelphi University, which gets us over to the cream of the crop, the top of the top. The D1 semifinals are today for the women's, Friday. As you guys know, we record on Friday. North Carolina and Florida taking the field at 3 p.m. North Carolina, a 1 seed. Florida, the 4 seed. Boston College, the 2 seed, taking on Northwestern, the 3 seed at 5:30 p.m. on Friday. I got North Carolina. I got Northwestern. Another championship game rematch for these two. 3 of these 4 teams have been here multiple times and are used to being here and expect to be here. I think we're going to get a blockbuster championship game, but I got North Carolina, who's been the 1 seed, having an undefeated year and remaining atop of the women's lacrosse world for yet another year. And then we're talking about the most exciting time of the year, the men's D1 National Championship game, which goes down on Memorial Day every single year. The semifinals are happening on Saturday. Cornell and Penn State, noon today. So pretty much as soon as we get off the line, you got number 1 Cornell taking on number 5 Penn State for a chance to play on Monday in the championship game. And on the other side, you got the 2-seeded Maryland Terrapins taking on the 6-seeded Syracuse Orange, 2:30 p.m. on Saturday. These games are also at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Both the men's and women's D1 semifinals and finals, along with the men's D2 and D3 finals, all at Foxborough. I got Syracuse and Cornell. Wouldn't be surprised or upset if Maryland was to end up in that championship game, but I have Cornell being the D1 men's national champions regardless of who they play. The NCAA, always fun to talk about, but we'd like to talk about the pros as well. The WNBA has gotten their season started. The new rookies already making an impact on the league, and that new team, the Valkyries, making some noise as well. I think the WNBA season is going to be extremely exciting this year. I think that we're going to see a ton of people make a name and a spark for themselves as they come into this league, trying to prove that they deserve to be here. Early on in the season, there's not a lot that can be said, but the standings are looking like this. The Minnesota Lynx sit at the top of the league, 3-0, but that's only because the New York Liberty and Phoenix Mercury have only played 2 games. They're both 2-0. You have the Indiana Fever and the Washington Mystics sitting at 2-1. The Golden State Valkyries, the Las Vegas Aces, and the Seattle Storm all sitting at 1-1 for the 6 through 8 seeds. The Los Angeles Sparks and Atlanta Dream are 1-2. The Connecticut Sun and Chicago Sky are both 0-2, and the Dallas Wings are 0-3. When you break it down by conferences, the New York Liberty sitting at top of the Eastern Conference, 2-0. The Indiana Fever and the Washington Mystics tied for second at 2-1. Atlanta Dream sitting in fourth at 1-2, and then Connecticut Sun and Chicago Sky at the bottom of the conference, both at 0-2. The Minnesota Lynx sitting at the top of the Western Conference, 3-0. The Phoenix Mercury, 2-0 right behind them. The Golden State Valkyries, Las Vegas Aces, Seattle Storm, all 1-1, tied for third in the conference. And then coming in at 7th, the Los Angeles Sparks at 1-2, and then the Dallas Wings in last in the Western Conference at 0-3. Still a long regular season to go. Obviously, all eyes on Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers, and many other young stars as they look to compete with the Diana Taurasi's, the Jonquil Jones, the Nafisa Colliers, and others that are still in the league, the Brittany Griners. The veterans make it what it is, but the youngins prove to add to the story. We're going to get ready to get these picks rolling and get you into the Memorial Day weekend with nothing but sports. Don't you go anywhere. We're going to talk how I did last week and talk some stuff this weekend. We got more Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK.
95.3 WBCK.
We're back with more Mitten Madness here on 95.3 WBCK. It's time to get into the picks for the week. Picks are not as fun without Jacob. I promise y'all I'm doing everything I can to to get this show sold and to get Jacob back in the building so that picks and more of these segments are more enjoyable. But for the meantime, you get an hour of me, and of course, you get to hear me blabble about why teams won't be good or why they will be successful, and you get to decide if I'm right or wrong. Use the chat feature in the BCK app. Let us know how well you did last week, because I'm about to tell you right now, your boy had a perfect week last week with my picks. Nuggets and Thunder for Game 7. As we know, the Thunder are still rolling and playing in the conference finals, so they did win Game 7. That marks me 1-0. Morales had absolutely no problems with Gilbert Burns last week. Actually finished him with a knockout in the first round, making it quick and easy. So that gets me up to 2-0. The Tigers, did they make it tough on your boy? Tigers ended up winning the series 2-1 after dropping the first game 11-4 and then winning the second game 5-4, almost giving me a heart attack, but 3-0 on the week. And then the Battlehawks, Panthers, and Defenders handled their business over in the XFL. So there were zero problems there, giving me a perfect 6-0 week on the week. And of course, we're about to see if we can do it all again. I've got 6 games lined up for us, and we are going to dive right into them, starting in the WNBA. Our first WNBA game of the weekend is going down just south of us in Indiana, in Indianapolis, at the Gamebridge Fieldhouse later today, 10 p.m. The Indiana Fever welcome in the New York Liberty, who are just a half game ahead of them at 2-0, while they sit at 2-1. The Liberty are currently 1-0 on the road. The Fever 1-1 at home, 2-1 on the year. This is the first game in their 4-game series of the year. The next one coming on June 14th. So far this year, both teams off to a solid start. Cloud averaging 20 and 8.5 in points and assists for the Liberty, while Jonquel Jones leads them with 8.5 rebounds. Caitlin Clark, 19.3 points per game, 9 assists per game as well, leading the Fever, while Aaliyah Boston has 10 rebounds per game to lead them in rebounding. Excuse me, this is a 1 p.m. start. Ignore the 10 p.m. 1 p.m. start on the 24th. Game will be played on CBS. They're giving the Liberty a 60% chance to win this game. The Fever just a 40% chance. Liberty opened up as 1.5-point favorites. They're now 2.5-point favorites. The over-under line is at 170.5, while the New York Liberty are negative 140 on the money line. And with that being said, I think that the Liberty are still one of those super teams in the WNBA that has just too much for most teams to compete with, which means I'm going to give them the win here. I think this will be an exciting game. I think it will be fun. I think that both Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston will give it their all, and they will make the Liberty earn this game. But I do think the Liberty will win this game, and it may be a completely different storyline come June 14th when they play in Indianapolis again for the second game in this series. But the first one, in my opinion, goes to the Liberty, which takes us to our next game in the WNBA. This time we are heading out west. We're going to be on the West Coast in Seattle at the Climate Pledge Arena, a 6 p.m. start on Sunday, May 25th. The Las Vegas Aces are coming into town. They are 1-1 on the year. Both of their games have been on the road so far, so they're 1-1 on the road as well. The Seattle Storm, 1-1 on the year as well. Both of their games have been on the road, so they're 1-1 on the road. But this is a home game, their home opener for the year. A game-time decision is Katie Lou Samuelson. She has not suited up yet this year, and we do not know if she'll suit up at all. So we'll find out in the coming weeks. The Vegas also Aces have Megan Gustafson and Chanae Parker Tyus sitting out as well. They both are expected back later this summer. But that doesn't stop anything for the Storm. They do still have Brianna Stewart. They have Skylar Diggins, who is 21 points per game on the average already this year, 6.5 assists, leading the team in both categories. Nagaya Gumake is leading the team in rebounding at 12.5 rebounds per game. 11 of those are defensive rebounds. Aja Wilson on the other side, leading the team in both points and rebounds with 26.5 points, 13 rebounds, 10.5 of those being defensive rebounds. Chelsea Gray leads the Aces with 4 assists per game. The Aces have been putting up 82 points per game so far this year, only giving up 77, rebounding 41 rebounds per game, 17 assists per game, and both teams are on a 1-game win streak. They both have beat Connecticut recently. The Aces have lost to the Liberty twice. The Aces beat the Mercury while the Storm lost to the Mercury. The Storm lost to the Aces twice back in September of 24. So we'll find out in this championship game rematch who will come out on top. But if you ask me, it's going to be the Aces. I think that Aja Wilson has simply just become too good. There's a reason why she has had multiple MVP awards in the WNBA already in her short career. I think the Aces improved to 2-1, while the Storm will fall a game behind. That's going to get us into our third WNBA game for the weekend. The Phoenix Mercury will be at home, as they have been for their first 2 games of the year. They're 2-0 at home, which gives them a 2-0 record. They're taking on the Washington Mystics, who will be coming into Phoenix, Arizona. 2-1 on the year, 1-1 on the road. This is at PHX Arena on Sunday at 3 p.m. The Mystics have Shakira Austin, Georgia Amore, and Aaliyah Edwards, who are all either out or game time decisions. So we'll find out if they're going to play sometime soon. Monique Okua Makani is a game time decision for the Mercury, while Natasha Mack and Kalia Copper are both out until later this summer. The matchup predictor is giving a 65% chance for the Mercury to win this game and just 35% for the Mystics. Mercury are going to be looking to stay undefeated at home. These two teams have been great on the offensive end. Washington averaging 86 points per game, while Phoenix just 85. But Washington giving up 83 points per game, while Phoenix only 72. 21 assists per game for Phoenix in comparison to 18 for Washington. Both these teams 2-3 in their last 5 games. And I think this one comes down to home court advantage and success already there this season. Phoenix playing their 3rd game in a row at home. I think that plays huge dividends, as Thomas leads the team in both rebounds and assists with 6 rebounds per game, 6.5 assists per game. Sabali coming in for Phoenix, leading them in points at 26 points per game. Sykes on the other side for the Mystics at 26.3 points per game, while Kiki Arifin leads the team in reboundings at 10 rebounds per game. Sykes also leads the team in assists at 5. But at the end of the day, the Mercury at home, and I think they remain undefeated at home and moving to 3-0. That's going to get us over to the UFL later on today. At noon, the Renegades will be traveling to Memphis to take on the Showboats. The Renegades 3-5 on the year. The Showboats are 2-6. If the Showboats they're already eliminated, and so are the Renegades. This game means almost nothing, but I'm going to pick it anyway, because why not? It's week 9, so that means the playoffs start in just 2 weeks. A lot of teams prepping themselves for the playoffs. These two teams are not. They're just trying to find out where they're going to be picking in the draft, or however the UFL works. The Renegades have been far better this year. They're opening the game at 5.5-point favorites. The line sits at 41.5 for the over-under. But at the end of the day, the Showboats are 2-6 this year and have really struggled. I don't think they come out on top of the Arlington Renegades. I'm going to take the Renegades to improve their record to 4-5 on the year. Excuse me, we're not even picking that game. I talked about that for zero reason. We're picking the Panthers and Stallions. Panthers 6-2, the Stallions 5-3. This game on ABC, ESPN Plus, 3 p.m. later today. The Panthers looking to continue to advance their way up the UFL standings. This will lock in their USFL standing of 1 seed on that side of the bracket. The Birmingham Stallions are 5-3. The Panthers 6-2. The winner of this game will get the 1 seed. And with the way this year has gone, the best point differential team in the league, the Michigan Panthers, plus 58, 211 points for, just 153 points against. They're on a 3-game win streak, and I think the winning ways continue. The Michigan Panthers will be the number 1 team in the USFL, and they will be making the playoffs. They will improve to 7-2 on the season. That is going to get us over into another game happening on the hardwood in the in the NBA. The Western Conference Finals, going into Game 3, the Oklahoma City Thunder currently hold a 2-0 lead. They were 32-8 on the road in the regular season. They have a 67.1% chance to win this game. And as much as I think that I would love to see the Thunder back in the NBA Finals, I don't know if it's going to happen that quickly. I think this series goes 6, and that starts with the Timberwolves winning this game, which they only have a 32.9% chance of doing at the Target Center, 8:30 p.m. later today. OKC opened the game at 4.5-point favorites. It's down to just 2.5. 218 is the over-under line, while it is minus 140 for OKC on the money line. I am going to lean on the side of caution and take the Timberwolves to extend this series just a little bit longer. The Tigers will take on the Giants in a early week series next week. They have them Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They will be playing Job on the mound on Wednesday. They will take Flaherty on the mound on Tuesday, and they will take Undecided on the mound on Monday against Birdsong. Tuesday, the Giants will throw out Webb, and Wednesday, they will put Raup on the mound. I have the Tigers winning this one, and it is a possible sweep that's going to give me the Liberty over the Fever, the Aces over the Storm, Tigers over the Giants, Panthers over the Stallions, T-Wolves over the Thunder, and Mercury over the Mystics. Y'all enjoy your Memorial Day weekend full of sports, family, good fun, and everything else. We will be back here next week with more Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK.
Join Jacob Harrison and Da'Jzon Hughes every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. for Mitten Madness on 95.3 WBCK. Miss the show or want to run it back? Stream Mitten Madness on demand on the WBCK app. Sponsored by airwaycashforjunkcars.com.